Felix, my man, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know you're a very busy man, literally 12 hours of back to back to back to back to back to back to back calls. Thank you for fitting in a pod episode, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure knowing you for so long, and I've definitely looked forward to actually come on officially for once. So I was happy that you asked me to come on. What is it, like 3 weeks ago now, when you came out of nowhere and just said, "Hey, let's jump on a call, and I want to have you on my podcast."
Got to slide into those DMs, brother. Otherwise, nothing gets done.
That's how we live in this space, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I love it. So, okay, I know you're very famous and a very big deal for a lot of people. But for the very few individuals who do not know you very well, maybe you could give us a little bit of a background. I want to do a super high level overview real quick, and then let's do the deeper dive into the full life arc.
Okay, sure thing. So to start off with, I'm not that famous yet. At least we'll see what happens in a decade or so. But sometime in the future, I might be more famous. But for those who don't know who Felix is, I am the elevator pitch. I would say is a software engineer with applied science background from Amazon and Twitch, and now turned more full time entrepreneur and Web3 enthusiast, trying to basically solve real world problems using the technologies of both AI from my background and then also Web3 technology, basically.
All right. And maybe you could talk about like some of the clients and role that you work with now and some of the just kind of some of the bigger names that you've been helping out and working with.
Yeah, sure thing. So I, for those who know me, they know that I'd actually like to be involved in a lot of different things. And the what kind of became my gateway drug into Web3 and everything that I'm doing today was Neo Tokyo, and still is a thing that is very close to my heart. I mean, that's how you and I met, and how I met a lot of other awesome people in the space. And I still dedicate at least two-digit numbers of hours to Neo Tokyo weekly when it comes to leadership. I used to do AMAs over Neo Tokyo. Now I basically am the lead of the dev department and also one of the Neo Tokyo community leads in general. Um, Apart from that, I work at a dev shop called Byte or Byte.io, which was founded by, well, one of the co-founders is Thrasher, the creator of the Neo Tokyo collection. So with them, I've been working on a lot of other prominent collections like Collider Craftworks. I've been working on and with clients like Vayner Sports. What else have I dabbled with? I worked with people like SteadyStack. Outside of there, I've been doing a lot of other like auditing work and so on as well. I have to think a bit more about more other names, but I've been involved here and there, at least doing some advisory work now and then on tokenomics and so on as well. Uh, but yeah, I think that should be enough.
All right. And you're also head of dev at Neo Tokyo.
Right.
That's a pretty big deal, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun. It has a lot of promise, and it's just fun to be part of a community where people are passionate and driven about what we have as a collective. So it's definitely been fun for the last 2 months since I actually officially became the lead there.
Of which I think we're all lucky. Very, very lucky that you signed up for the task.
Thank
But
you, thank you.
yeah, but let's hop back and let's get the full story.
Sure thing. So where do you want to begin?
I would say from the beginning when what were you like? What were you like growing up, and what did that? How did that lead to who you are today, and what's the story there? How'd you get to where you are
Wow.
today?
Wow, we're going that far back, huh?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of my personality stems from pretty early upbringing. So for those who don't know me, I was the firstborn boy in 2 generations on my mother's side. And my grandfather, her father, always wanted to have a boy as his child. So when I came into being, I became his little prince. And I can already feel like my voice is quivering a bit, but that also meant that I had a very, very strong relationship to my grandfather. He was my role model in everything. He always took care of me. He also scared the living crap out of me at times. But
Yeah.
I still loved him to death. And unfortunately, he had just turned 70. Basically, just 1 month after he turned 70, he unfortunately passed away, and I was 8 years old. And I remember that day very, very vividly. And that was the first time I lost somebody that was so close to me. And I really remember that pain and everything. But that kind of formed me as well when it came to handling emotions and the social norms of being a man. So I kind of cried once and then shut myself off until we had the funeral, and then I cried once more. And then after that, I did not open up that box for many, many years. But along with that, I really wanted to kind of carry on his legacy as well, because I'm also one of the few boys in my generation on that side of the family. And I actually am the only boy that still has his surname, which is Nordén, or Nordén as it is in Swedish. And I'm very adamant about carrying on that legacy because, yeah, my grandfather was an amazing man. And I think I carried on or inherited a lot of his entrepreneurial spirits, because he started off as a farmer who then got into real estate and used all of his empty barns during the summers to then store, basically he rented out as a warehouse for other people to store things and so on. And yeah, he was thrifty. Moving onward, moving forward, when just be through like school life and everything, I've always had a good time with school. School has been not the most fun, but I have the ability to learn quite easily. So I've never really had much challenges there. And when I got into high school, I was very interested in, games and gaming and so on, of course, like any other boy of our generation. But I also felt like I wanted to become something. And what my uncle then told me was that it's good to be an engineer. And I was like, okay, what type of engineer is of relevance? And he told me that, which is something that's also very, very important for those who are interested to learn. Being an engineer is not about what line of engineering you're going into. It's probably going to be applicable to some extent, but the important thing about being an engineer is that you go through the ropes of learning how to learn, or metacognition. And that made it way more easier for me to also decide on what engineering education I wanted to take. When the time came and I had gone through high school, I stood between either becoming a doctor, because that was also something I always wanted to be, or becoming either a industrial economy engineer or software engineer. And I was thinking that soft skills is something that you can always learn by talking with people and having experience, but learning deeper tech and everything is harder. So I was like, let's go with deeper tech. And I was fortunate enough to always have good people around me when it came to education in high school. So I had my personal kind of vendetta with my closest friend at the time. So we always battled about everything, including school grades and everything. And I was lucky enough to come out at top of class and top of school with basically full marks. So I could choose. And for those who don't know, in Sweden, when you apply to university, you're actually allowed to apply to any university. You don't have to pay for anything. all that matters is your grades, which is very fortunate if you want to study in Sweden, that is.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah, it's very useful. The downside I had with that was that we had some internal issues with my family. So my father is a person I don't have much contact with. I haven't spoken with him in 2 or 3 years right now. And he is kind of he's a person that is a kind of pathological liar, and has gambling addictions and so on, which has had its problem within our family. And my mother has had a problem with addiction to alcohol. So at that time, that was a very rough patch in my life where I just wanted to get as far away as possible. So I actually went and did interviews for civil engineering, I think it was, over at Cambridge University. That was the first time I actually traveled abroad without my parents. And I really wanted to go because, well, one, Cambridge is cool. It really gives you the Harry Potter vibes and everything, which is awesome.
Gotta love that.
Exactly, and everybody's super polite, and it's just beautiful. I went there during the autumn or fall, and you really feel like you're in a British movie when you're there. It's cool. But the downside to having free school in Sweden is that, well, parents don't save for you to go to university, and it's very hard to cough up that much money. So if I would have chosen to go there, I would have been very deep in debt. So I got to pick the second best option, and that was to move from my small hometown called Motala to Gothenburg, which is the second largest city in Sweden. I studied either between Chalmers there or KTH, which stands for basically the Royal Technical University, but in Swedish it's Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan, which is, but they're the two, I would say, strongest technical universities in Sweden right now. And I had cousins and stuff in Gothenburg, so I just went there because they said, "Ooh, we're gonna have so much fun together. It's gonna be nice to have family close and so on." Didn't necessarily happen, but hey, it was good. It was fun. And I just went deep into studying there, chugged along. It was fun, challenging. Met a lot of great people, friends for life, especially during the bachelor's. I'm actually going to go back in a couple of weeks to Sweden to meet up with them, which is going to be super fun. And when the time came for master's, COVID hit, which was also very adventurous because I was planning on going over to the US to actually do my part of my master's or my full master's over at Stanford, because I had strong support from mentors that I had at Twitch. I already started working at Twitch part-time while studying. I basically have been working since I was 13. I wanted to be involved, and my parents were very adamant about teaching me about how to handle money. So I was very much a person that wanted to make it big over time and just earn my fill. And that led to me being fortunate enough to actually be one of the few people who've been able to work part-time at a big company like Twitch, which has been amazing. And well, now the COVID hit, a lot of those ideas were put on hold. So I went and did my master's in machine learning and AI at Chalmers. And I had my second plan, which was, well, if I can't go to the US, let's go to the best technical university in Europe for a semester, when I had studied ahead a bit and basically could take whatever course I wanted for 6 months without having to worry about credits or anything. But then the second wave of COVID hit. So I had to stay at home once again. And yeah, it was like the higher powers do not want me to get out of Sweden. What is this? But with that unluckiness or bad fortune, I actually stumbled upon the most fortunate thing at all overall, and that was meeting what is now my fiance, Astrid, which you also met.
So incredible human being.
She's amazing. Without her, I would not be here today. That's definitely one thing that is for certain. So I met her. We got together after a couple of months of dating, and well, that time has kind of flown by. But with that, I finished up my studies 6 months in advance as well, because I couldn't go to Zurich for my studies in Europe, and I basically got headfirst into working and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And yeah, I did applied science there at Twitch for a couple of years. And for those who don't know what applied science is, I feel like I'm rambling a lot, so feel free to interrupt me whenever you want to.
Oh, I will. Don't worry.
Awesome. So what applied science is a good way of viewing it is basically you take software engineering and you take data science, which is machine learning and AI and so on, and you kind of merge the two into one. And what I mean by that is regular data science doesn't necessarily mean that you put machine learning models and the like into production and into a system that has high scalability and optimization demands, which means that as a data scientist, you don't necessarily have the technical know-how how to write good code and make sure that everything is performant. With applied science, you take that a level up, and that's where the software engineering side comes into play. So you need to write not only good models that are performing, but also make it so that it actually scales and can work on not only like thousands of users, but maybe hundreds of thousands or even millions of users like we had at Twitch. So what I did there was a lot of machine learning on some search engine stuff, mainly natural language processing. And that's also what I did my thesis on. And it was tons of fun. But after a while, I felt like I was kind of stagnating in my position. So I had the opportunity to either go across the seas or across the Atlantic Ocean over to the US to actually work with a new team in San Francisco. Or I could go into the field where I was feeling more and more passionate. And at that time, well, it still is, but that is Web3. And I basically chose the opportunity to go into a small startup to just dig deep into Web3 full time. And the rest is kind of history on that point. I mean, with that, I met a lot of people.
Second. Before you go there, how did you originally discover crypto, and how did you make the decision, and why did you make the decision that you wanted to go into Web3?
Well, okay, so that's an excellent question. So to answer the first piece, I got into Web3 for the first time in the end of the last bull, so around 2017, 2018. And that was because one of my upperclassmen at uni was very, very deep into it. And he's actually written code that is inside of the EVM today. And he was talking about blockchain and Merkle trees and so on. And we got close. We studied courses together and we had a lot of fun. And he said that, I mean, blockchain is the future. It's definitely relevant. You should definitely go into it. So I was lucky enough to get some tax returns at that point, and I bought Ethereum for it. And that was, I think it was like $3,000 or something. And that was around the time when ETH was at like $700 or something, I think it was. And well, at that point, Ethereum started to decline as well. And it was just when it started to go up, and then it hit the peak, and then it fell down. And I was feeling like, okay, I'm not going to touch this for a while. So I just put it away, didn't touch anything. And then when I went into full time on Twitch after finishing uni, my boss at the time and also mentor, lifelong friend and mentor, Christian, he got into some what we nowadays call degening and Shiba Inu and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, let me start looking a bit more into this because this is fun. And at that point, my Ethereum that I had bought was, well, Ethereum at that point was like 2.2K. That was a pretty decent growth. That was like more than a 3x. So I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting again. Let's get back into it. And with that, I started reading more and more into everything. I got into this new thing that was NFTs through Alex Becker. And then I met so many good people and friends for the Neo Tokyo riddles. I mean, I even met who is now my best friend and is going to be the best man for my wedding and the godfather of my children and everything. I met him through this adventure, which is amazing. And I kind of got stuck into it. And I felt like when it came to meeting people, people listened and I had a voice. And instead of being in a very, very competitive area, which is science, and feeling like I'm in a position where I can't grow, here I could have the freedom to actually explore and dig into things, solve problems. People listened and appreciated me. And yeah, it made me feel a lot stronger. And that's kind of why I jumped into it, I think. And with that, I mean, I met so many different people, some great, some people that I would rather prefer that I wouldn't meet as well.
Mhm.
But I feel like the people that we have, for example, in New Tokyo, a lot of them have the heart in the right place. They really respect each other, and we just have a good time. And that's what really caught me, I feel like.
Yeah, I love that. So, okay, so then you make the decision to go into Web3. You start to deploy your skill set there.
Mm-hmm.
You've learned how to learn from being an engineer, which
Yep.
I think is an absolute like critical skill to know. And I think you really outline that perfectly. What were some of the big learning or shifts in learning that you had to do? Like basically, how did you have to retool to go from what you were doing before into becoming a lethal Web3 dev?
So that's a good question. I mean, I still to this day feel like my passion will be in bridging AI and Web3 together because they have a lot of benefits from each other. We can go into that later on though. But with that, I still always had a strong passion for good code and engineering as a whole. And when I started digging into Solidity and everything when it came to Web3, it I would say the most important thing for me was to lose the fear of the whole, ooh, the blockchain is immutable. And once it's there, it's done and you're screwed and so on. Yes, if you don't think about the engineering decisions you're doing, these things will happen like it does everywhere else. But I mean, the space has been moving very, very rapidly as well, but there are good software practices. And I think that's what gave me the edge that I've learned from Web 2 that can be applied in Web3 as well, because it's just software. The only thing that changes here is that Web3 brings in decentralization and distributed computing to a whole other level. But apart from that, it's just a virtual machine, basically a small program that runs your code and then says to everybody else, hey, this is what's happening. And then all of these different programs can reach a consensus and feel like, okay, this is the next state and this is the next block that is going to come out on the blockchain. But apart from that, there's not too much else different. So I think it wasn't too much about adapting. It was more about following the things that I'd learned before and just getting exposed towards blockchain. Because I tell this to every non-technical person nowadays because I love the analogy, but the blockchain is nothing but a glorified Excel sheet or a database. And every smart contract you can view as one of the sheets in a spreadsheet. You have the smart functionality, you can do functions on top of changing the data, but at the end of the day, that's all it is. So if you go in with that mentality and touch on the blockchain, don't be afraid that something will happen or something might break, because things will inevitably break. But if you don't have the experience towards it and learn how to cope with it, you'll just be stuck.
So when you say that it's literally just like a spreadsheet,
Hmm.
Can you dig into that? Like maybe give us a intro to how to become a dev, or at least how to think about it from a high level.
Hmm.
Like give us that 101 class real quick.
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. So what I mean by it being a spreadsheet is that the only thing that really matters in program and in computing in general is you need to have some form of data or state as it is on the blockchain. And you need to do computations on top of that state and potentially change what the new state is supposed to be. Now, what that looks like in a spreadsheet is either you do a computation, like you do a summation of two columns, and then you output that into a third column. You can do the exact same thing in on the blockchain. Now, maybe that is not efficient or whatever, but at the simplest point, it's all about these two building blocks, state and computations on the state, to then produce new state and so on as well. But that's basically all you need. And then you can add in more complexities on top of it. But as long as you can do these programmatic operations like in any other programming language, then you're good to go. And I mean, for context there as well, that's kind of what made Neo Tokyo and punks and so on so cool and so interesting for a lot of people, because you could do everything on the blockchain. The important thing here, in my opinion, is that you shouldn't necessarily do that, because all tools have their own benefits and downsides as well. And one thing that engineers teach you, or what that engineers are taught in engineering school, is that just because you have a shiny new hammer doesn't make everything a nail. And that's the important thing to take into the consideration here as well. Not everything should live on the blockchain. Important data that isn't critical, well, that is critical for uptime, for making sure that it's not tampered with and so on, perfect to have on the blockchain. Now, for things like PFPs and so on, should that live on the blockchain? Maybe not. But the ownership rights of it, like the token itself, it's useful to have on the blockchain and so on. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. And I like having being able to go on record with you explaining that to people. Because I think in 100 years, when obviously this technology is still going to be useful, I think people are going to be like, ah, yes, okay, good, thank you, Felix, and that'll be really helpful to people.
Glad
So
it could help.
yeah, 100%. So okay, I want to give them a little bit more though on the dev side, because how often do we really get to talk about this? So, okay, let's say somebody wants to become a dev and they know nothing about it. Like they literally know nothing. Maybe stay away from specific things, because let's try to make this evergreen, right? So if we give any sort of links or specific places to go to get stuff,
Right.
that may not age properly, but just the high level of like, how do you do it, what's kind of the pathway of how you go from zero to hero in the world of being a dev.
Mm-hmm. That's also a great question. I mean, so nowadays, in order to become a dev, there are two main avenues that people take. And that is either you take formal education, or you could, well, three avenues. Formal education, you can do this kind of quick and dirty bootstrapping, which is taking like an intensive course or like a boot camp, or you could learn on your own. Now, what I felt was, when I made my decision to go into engineering school, it was very much that this is a tried and true process. It has its pedigree. You get your certificate. You know what the curriculum is. You don't have to plan out everything there as well, and you get to try things in a safe environment. So that's when I felt like, okay, I want to go with that, because then I don't have to think about what do I need to learn, because that's the biggest problem with the dev space and a lot of other areas as well. But it's very easy to just get paralyzed by all the different options that are out there, and you are like confused as to what should I focus on first. That's what that solved for me. Um, but I would say pick any of those three that you feel is worthwhile for you. I would say for those who are very, very green and not too confident in their computing skills or whatever, I would go with a boot camp or formal education. I argue that formal education is also very, very good if you want to be an engineer versus a developer, just because you learn fundamental concepts that takes time to develop and learn about. But following that as well, I mean, you can look up other types of small courseware as well. I got started with writing my first lines of code by taking a so-called MOOC, so a massive online open course, I think it's called. And that was Harvard's CS50X. And I know we said we didn't want to give any specific links. This thing I took in 2014, and they are still updating the curriculum year over year over year, because that is actually the courseware that Harvard is taking and giving us the introductory course for computer science.
They'll probably still be around for a while.
That's what I'm thinking too. That's what I'm thinking too. And it's actually very, very high quality. Everything is free. If you want to get started, I would say go start there. If you don't have the economy to do so, on any other areas. But following that, once you have that, I would say the core thing is don't be afraid to explore, and have that explorative mindset, and try to challenge yourself, and try to solve problems that are scratching your own itch. And I'm not the best person to follow that advice myself, because I always had this monetary incentive stuck back in my brain saying like, hey, if I can make money out of something, I'm going to gravitate towards that instead. I'm finally getting to the point where I'm thinking I can always make money. Sometimes I need joy in life as well. And just building stuff that is fun for me or for my fiance or something else is just as gratifying, even though it won't necessarily lead to money. But what I did when I learned was I found ways to monetarily incentivize myself. So one thing that I did when I learned Solidity was that I started off with doing contract audits. And I didn't charge much upfront in the beginning, but then I just kept ramping it up as well until somebody started saying no, because that also helped me value myself. But at the same time, I got exposure to both good and bad code. I got to criticize it. I had to read it very, very thoroughly to make sure that the audit was good as well. And I got paid for reading somebody else's code and learning at the same time. And that's great for me as a person. I did the same thing when I took notes in university as well. I was basically a notary, or a person taking notes for people with disabilities, learning disabilities, and so on, and then shared it with them, and I got compensated for it, which was a great carrot for me because I had that need for the money. So it's all about finding, I would say, the guiding hand for you to get over that threshold, and then also trying to lower the threshold as much as possible. And that is build small things. Don't go in to try and build Facebook, because you will not be able to build Facebook. It's just that hard. I mean, Facebook in the beginning, if you haven't watched the movie, read the books or whatever, it was nothing too major except for a website where people could create accounts and connect. And now it's Meta that is humongous, but that is also because they have thousands upon thousands of engineers who's building it. So yeah, I would say find the learning method that works for you. Once you started to get going and have a basic understanding of dev tech, find ways to scratch your own itch and don't be afraid to explore.
I love that. And I think in today's day and age, there are so many pieces of content out there that people can literally just go explore. Yep. And then go check all the different, whatever major source of content is available to you at the time. And then it seems like there's a lot of tools that you can use and apps that'll actually help you code. And then you could probably also get AI to teach you. That would actually be something I would love, considering how passionate you are also about AI. I would love to know your thoughts on how to use actually how to use AI to learn or teach yourself or code with, or like how you kind of see that work, like how that works now, and then how you see that evolving over time.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people have been talking a lot about AI is going to replace engineers and development and so on and so forth. I think we're way far off from that. Sure. Well, let's take one step back. One thing that I want to make abundantly clear for people is as well is that, because this was something that kind of turned me off when I took formal education in machine learning and AI, but AI is nothing magical. The tweet that I actually liked and retweeted that the other day as well, but Elon Musk put up an amazing tweet with the meme with the mask, where it says, you have this person that has a mask that says AI on the mask, and then they remove it and it says statistics, and that's just what it is. Machine learning and AI is just a shit ton of statistics that are so big and so hard to crunch that you have the machine find patterns in the statistics for you. Now the question is, the big problem here is that they might find correlations between different things that aren't necessarily mechanistically true. So for example, you have these correlationary graphics of, well, people dying from heart disease, or no, the happiest people on earth are also the people who eat copious amounts of chocolates. Well, that might not have any actual effect on each other. They might have a causal factor behind everything that similarly affects both of them, but they are not intertwined in a sense. And yeah, what I want to say with that is just AI is just statistics. And it's learning in this case from a lot of humans, a lot of open code, which isn't necessarily always correct. And given that it's reading a lot of the things that are incorrect, it may also then bake in incorrect versions of its own examples that it's putting out there. With that in mind, I was going to say, with that in mind, it's very good at trying to put out information and approximations when in terms of text and solution, like ChatGPT is great when it comes to answering questions. The important thing is you always do the fact checking. So I would say, in order to learn leveraging AI for development, I wouldn't necessarily have AI spit out a lot of code for you if you already know how to code, but instead help you describe and model what the systems you're going to implement will look like. So help with, okay, I want to build. So I did this when I had to do a lot of estimates the other week, but basically, let's say I want to build a notification system to notify my users about something happening that they have subscribed for to do. Okay, so the question then would be, what different components in this system would I want to break things up into in order to make sure that the code is maintainable, it's fun to work with, it is performant, and it doesn't do duplicate work or it doesn't have code duplication. And you can ask ChatGPT that, and it's going to spit out suggestions. And then you can read through it. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Do you want to basically revise anything? And it's a great ball plank to talk with to do those things. I wouldn't necessarily want to use it for the code generation part, though. It's scary to me to do that because I've seen some very, very scary, obscure bugs come into play that could have very, very, well, one, they're going to be very hard to find, and two, it can have serious repercussions. So yeah, did that answer your question? I'm just rambling again.
Yeah, I think it did. So maybe it's more of like, it's not like going to spit out all the code for you at this point, but maybe you could use it to learn about a certain thing, or like, I'm having this issue. How do I troubleshoot that, or something?
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. I would use it for basically as a peer reviewer to comment on your concepts, help add in voids in your content and so on. And from there, make your own qualified decision on, is this good or bad? and then from there try to implement it, and then maybe just learn from experience. Now, there are some cases where it's actually very, very useful. For example, ChatGPT is very good with languages like Python for data science and stuff. So it can help you with non-destructive code. So code that is used to interpret other code or data that you're using could be very useful, like visualizations, doing plots, running statistics, and so on for you. Because, well, that's nothing that you would copy and paste and put into production, but you can then understand what it is that you're doing. And for those cases, I would say it's great. But I would never want to put it into production. Not yet.
That makes a lot of sense. And then one other on this topic, and then I want to keep going in your journey. And I know that we also are, we do have a limited amount of time here, so I want to make sure we make the most of it. So AI and programming. Do you see, given how powerful AI has potential to become, do you think that it is still a good idea to, do you think it's still a good idea to learn how to code and learn how to program?
Yes, very much so. So for various reasons. One thing I would say, the key thing about coding is, well, one, it's a very cheap skill to learn because all you need is a very, very cheap laptop and, well, a text prompt or whatever, and you can write your own code. And it helps you get into an appropriate mindset to solve problems. You get into a very natural habit of solving problems ahead of you, and you can break these problems into smaller problems so you don't get as overwhelmed. So it's very good from an operations perspective. It's allowed me to handle way, way, way more stress and pressure over time. And it's allowed me now, I mean, I think I'm involved with 6 or 7 different businesses at a high level, both strategic and operational and so on. And I would not be able to do that without having the skills that I've learned from coding. The second thing I would say is that, yes, AI is very good at learning from what it's seen before, but not everything has been done yet. And those who are learning to code for the future will effectively have a hand in defining what the future will hold. And that could include maintaining and changing and building out more AI to help us with the lower level or easier tasks. Or it could just be to supersede AI in general, because it might be things that AI will never be able to solve. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen or not, of course.
Do you think there's ever a time when it would be too late for somebody to try to learn how to code?
No, never. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've heard many, many success stories of people going into coding as their second career choice in their 50s. And that's also one amazing thing, because given that you don't necessarily need to have any deep education in it, you just need to be able to get things to work and over time then learn and be productive and do good work with it. It is not that hard to get into. And even though people have said, hey, tech is bleeding because of the eventual recession and so on, yes, but tech will come back and grow as well. And there's always been a need for developers. It's just that the market now is not willing to overpay as much when we're going downhill. But developers have been very, very well paid since the beginning as well. So yes, definitely.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I want to keep going on your journey. So you get into Web3, start to make a name for yourself, and then you find somehow Neo Tokyo. How does that work? And then maybe take us through the rest of the story from there. And then if we can, I would love to talk about your project. I don't know if we can talk.
Yeah, we can talk about that as well. Sure. So To clarify, so I never started to make a name for myself until I was in Neo Tokyo. So I've been in Neo Tokyo since day one. I started to make a name for myself. The first time that I got recognition was during the second event in Neo Tokyo, where we solved. We played this game called Con Climb, and there was the mint for the vault boxes, and I noticed that something was very, very off. Because there was formatting issues in the spreadsheets that were for the whitelist and so on. So it definitely seemed like things were tampered with. So I just sat openly in voice chat and theory crafted a bunch, and people just came in, listened, some asked questions. We talked and talked and talked, and all of a sudden there were like 50 to 100 people sitting in the voice chat listening. And I made a lot of good connections just from that session. And it was just so fun because everybody just spun on each other's ideas. I tried to make sure that we were still rational in our thinking, and we just had fun and bounced back and forth. And then, yeah, things kind of continued until we had the citizens. I was involved with getting going with the guild system. That never really went anywhere, unfortunately. We'll see maybe in the future. But with that, I also started up the AMA initiative in Neo Tokyo. So I started to do a bunch of AMAs with different projects coming in for whitelists. We're coming in with whitelists and a lot of other things for our community. And I basically did a lot of interviewing, met with a lot of people outside of Neo Tokyo that way as well. And yeah, just got to know a lot of people and had fun along the way. And like much like you, enjoy speaking with people and interviewing and just going with the flow and seeing where you can scratch that person's itch so they can open up and have fun. Because I know we're very similar in that sense when it comes to our strategies, when it comes to interviewing and talking. And it's so much fun to see like, okay, can I poke here? Or can I poke here and see how the person reacts? Because some personalities are so shut off. But when you hit that particular thing that they enjoy, they just open up like a book and they just shine. And it's amazing to feel like you can be there to support them, to help them be their best. But yeah, I mean, that was the main thing with Neo Tokyo for quite a while. And along with that, I got the recognition to be hired into Byte and working full-time as the developer I am today. And yeah, I mean, I've been doing, like I mentioned, auditing work on the side. I've been helping out wherever I can, doing some advisory with my applied science background as well. I also do a lot of number crunching and math work. So I've been looking at tokenomics often and had a lot of fun with that. And one thing that also came into play was me and a few other citizens, we started what was called at the time the Neo Tokyo investment team. And it basically was about bringing in investment opportunities for the community, having a lot of fun along the way. And we brought in some cool projects, some less cool ones. And at that time as well, Neo Tokyo was kind of led into the mindset of, well, it's a networking group and people who should build outside of Neo Tokyo. So we took that idea after a while when we felt like we were pushed out to build what is now known as Spectre, which I still to this day lead, and have built some cool tech around that, which is basically full on-chain bookkeeping for people's investments, basically automating for scale investments and investment pooling, and then also have cross-chain token claiming. So we can make sure that the people who have ever invested with us as a community in a token will be able to get out the token, even if Spectre as a company no longer exists. And that's the beauty, like I talked about, with the blockchain. You have the benefit of persisting things over time, and you can use the smart behavior of the blockchain, or the EVM in this case, to allow people to do these operations, even though the person that actually owned the contracts is not there. So that has been going on for quite a while as well. We have some good opportunities now and then. They're come in right now. Given the market, we're kind of gone down into the down low, but we're still chugging along, making sure that the investments that have been made are being updated to people, and yeah, making sure that everybody's up to date, those who want to be involved. And then from there, it's been adventuring on other avenues as well. I mean, we have a lot of mutual friends like Dr. JPEG. I've been helping them with NFA now and then. I've been helping out with some other citizen projects as well. The Neo Tokyo citizens are we are a very, very strong builders community. I think we're coming up on almost like 100 unique projects, if not more now, that people are building. And it's very fun to see. And I have a lot of fingers in those pies because it's fun, even though it's maybe just some meetings now and then to support or advise, down to even building like deep level stuff like what we're doing, not only in Spectre, but in another project that is Animore, which me and a few friends are working on, where we're trying to build a game that helps with therapeutic self-help, where we're leveraging AI and tried and true therapeutical models for relationships to help a person communicate with different personalities, different AI-driven personalities, for them to explore and understand how different types of people function with themselves, so they can then understand how to communicate properly with people. Because, well, communication is hard for people. And it's always a dialogue, or it should always be a dialogue. So there is never a reason. What's the saying? In Sweden, in Swedish, we usually say, there is never a reason to blame one person for the arguments of two. Basically meaning that if two people are in an argument, both of them will need to adapt. You can never blame a singular person in it. And this is basically what we want to try and help people with here, and then see where that goes in the future. And the fun thing with this is that we've gotten a lot of attention from people outside of crypto in the medical field, and they want to know how they can help and what we can achieve with all this. And hopefully in the future, this is something that we can roll out not only as a game, but even as something that could just be used by therapists or people in general that just need to get that help, that don't have not the economy, nor the trust in themselves to go out and open themselves up for others. Because I know myself, I had that issue when I had to go and seek help for basically my codependency of my mother being an alcoholic, because that hit me very, very hard. And I know how difficult it is to feel like you can go and feel helpless, especially as a man, because the male norms out there don't allow you to be emotional. And that is not always good. It's rarely good, because people boil from the inside and eventually just break down. But that's another topic. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about right now, and that is Animore. There are many other things as well that I'm being involved with, which are very fun. One thing that I've been working on the sidelines a bit now, because that is kind of tying into what I envision is to become my empire. And I think that is what you want to talk about as well. That is what the agency that I've been working on building for development consulting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I've basically done there is that I've taken some of the people that I met from previous ventures, like, for example, our front end lead there, or senior front end engineer in the agency. I met him. He was the first hire I made as a dev, well, as a founder of Spectre, when we needed a dev. And he's an amazing person. I love him to bits. We work very, very well together. He has immense experience, and he's just a nice guy. And what I try to do with this is just gather those types of people that I feel like I can trust, that I can work with, and then bring them into one place where we can have fun, build things to improve the overall space, and innovate with the clients that we're getting. Because we want to innovate, we want to move the space forward instead of just emptying people's pockets. We want to really make sure that we're solving problems. And then the goal with this is to actively grow this and then have this, for me, act as sort of like an attractor or a magnet to pull in people that are interested in getting involved and that I see as having potential. And then we, who then have senior roles in all of our fields, from design to front-end development to back-end development to blockchain, and with AI algorithms and so on, we can help and foster and build up these junior devs to become intermediate, even senior devs as well. And then from there, we can just let this naturally, organically grow over time and take in more clients, have fun, build amazing stuff, and everybody can just collectively have a good ride. Is the vision.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And just knowing you and one of the other individuals on the team, who I'm not sure if I can leak, so I'm not going to, but
thank you. Not yet. Soon.
Yeah. But another dear friend who's, I don't even know if I could say what their brilliance is because that might give it away. But anyways, another absolute rock star. And I'm just so excited for all of you guys and
thank you
on the team. I mean, it's going to be awesome. So I'm just super pumped. And I'm glad we got a chance to chat about it. But we have a couple minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about, and then I know we got to run, but to tee us up for maybe an episode 2 later down the road, which I think would be fun. I would love to get your thoughts on where, like, let's put a timestamp on this episode, and we'll see how this part ages. But where do you think we are in the grand scheme of the intersection of gaming, crypto, and AI, and how is that all going to come together?
Ooh, that's an excellent question.
An easy question for the last few minutes.
Yeah. So where I see AI being very, very useful is in 3 areas. One thing is lore and creation. So that's kind of where we're tapping into things for Animoria right now. We're using the brains of the AI to, well, in our case, it's more about understanding the personalities of different people. But you can create a lot of content that is dynamic based of inputs. So you can create tailored stories for different people en masse, which is interesting. AI on another end for gaming would be helping up with proof of concepts and creating a lot of mid-fidelity content, like videos or paintings, drawings, like Midjourney and so on. And then the last thing I would say is like what we've seen since a few years back, but basically AI for helping people with, well, a strong AI competitor, or it could be through improving skill sets or whatever, just have somebody adversarially fight against you or with you. And then tying that to with Web3 as well in gaming. I mean, the core thing about Web3 is true ownership. And I still to this day feel like that is the strongest factor into gaming, where if you put in money into assets, you should always be able to withdraw those assets and sell them on the secondary markets or do whatever you want to do with them. If you want to destroy them, you can destroy them and so on. And it should be beneficial and built in such a way that you as a consumer is benefited, but also that the company that is producing all this is benefited. And it shouldn't be a one-way street. That said, there are many different ways of doing so. But I feel like tying in and making it a two-way street in general is the key thing to work towards. And then just another thing that we can talk about and leave for us is just, if we were to exclude gaming from this as well, how could Web3 and AI work together? But in there comes the um, decentralized or distributed computation benefits into play, where you can use multiple computers to help train AI, or you can use incentivization mechanisms to help procure data so people get compensated for labeling or procuring good quality data for you, which could then actually be shared openly on the blockchain and so on. But yeah, there are many different avenues to go down here. But I would say those are my core thoughts. AI for illustrations, lore, content, or just in-game usage, and Web3 for incentivization and making sure that people have true ownership. That's what I would say for gaming.
Very exciting. I actually have an idea, and I'm going to timestamp this on my end as well. I have an idea, and I'm putting this out there for a challenge to myself. But I want to be one of your clients for the agency, and I have an idea to build. I'm going to drop that seed. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be super fun. It's absolutely going to encapsulate all the three things that we were just talking about. But
Exciting.
I'm not going to give any other heads up on that. But you'll be the first one to know, and then everybody else, whenever that does pop off, y'all will then be the next ones to know. But now you can all stay in the mysterious shroud of not knowing what this is for a little while.
Exciting.
But anyways, Felix, you're the man. I appreciate you coming on. I know we're going over time here. Any last thoughts, words of wisdom that you want to share with the people before we sign off?
I would say if you're on Discord, you can always hit me up whenever. My DMs tend to be open on most Discord servers. I actually managed to lock in my OG handle, Felix Nordén, now that Discord is moving off of the hashtags, which is great. So I'm just Felix Nordén there. You can find me on everything else as well with Felix Nordén, except for Twitter, Felix TR Nordén, because of my middle names, because somebody else took my handle. But apart from that, I mean, feel free to always reach out if you need some guidance, help with getting started with anything. I love teaching. Teaching is so much fun to me. And yeah, don't lose that curious mindset is what I would say.
I love it. You're the man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and to for taking a break to come chat.
Anytime. My pleasure. Happy to be
Awesome.
on.
Appreciate it. And to everybody watching, listening, thank you so much. I love you all, each and every one of you. And I will see you all some other time.